Welcome to This Explainer. Let's jump right in. Today we're exploring an absolute superpower, how to observe your emotions without becoming totally overwhelmed by them. We're going to unpack exactly how mastering this internal territory gives you an unshakable, quiet authority in the real world. To kick things off, imagine a guy standing in the middle of a burning city, his entire empire collapsing around him. That was the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He wrote these words while facing wars, plagues, and betrayals. And you know what? His greatest secret wasn't his massive army. It was his ability to remain completely undisturbed while the world fell apart. That is the superpower we're digging into today. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We'll quickly cover the myth of detachment, the Stoic anchor, the science of clarity, leadership and quiet authority, and finally, your daily detachment playbook. All right, Section 1, the myth of detachment. Let's clear up a huge misconception right off the bat, so we have a solid foundation. People constantly confuse detachment with just being numb, but those are two totally different things. Psychologically speaking, things like childhood emotional neglect can cause a survival strategy called avoidant attachment, where someone basically shuts down their emotional needs. They build walls, right, because relying on people felt unsafe. But that trauma-based numbness, that is not healthy detachment. Healthy detachment isn't about building walls, it's about building windows. It's creating clear panes of glass so you can see a situation exactly for what it is, without your reactive emotions distorting the view. So it really comes down to this. Indifference is when you just don't care. But detachment? Detachment is the presence of absolute clarity. Think of a brilliant surgeon. They don't stop caring about the patient on the operating table. They detach from their own internal fear of messing up, so their hands stay perfectly steady. True detachment is just the disciplined practice of separating your knee-jerk reaction from your ultimate long-term goal. Section 2, the Stoic anchor. Let's look at how the ancients anchored themselves when things got turbulent. This is a timeless superpower. Seriously, we're talking about a thread that runs from ancient Roman Stoics like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, literally all the way to modern legends like Kobe Bryant. Completely different eras, entirely different arenas, but they all mastered the exact same internal skill, separating who they are at their core from external outcomes. Take Marcus Aurelius again. He used his daily journals, what we now call his meditations, to train his own mind. He knew, for sure, that if his sense of self depended on what was happening outside of him, he'd always be one bad day away from losing himself completely. By sitting alone and writing, he consistently separated his identity from his throne, from public praise, and from the total chaos of his empire. Moving on to Section 3, the science of clarity. We're pivoting from ancient philosophy to modern neuroscience here. When a massive emotional stressor hits you, you can experience what psychologist Daniel Goleman calls an amygdala hijack. Basically, your brain's alarm system trips before your logical thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, even gets a chance to wake up. When that happens, your IQ essentially plummets. You get intense tunnel vision on the threat, and your ability to reason just collapses. But the good news is, we can actually fight back against this. Dr. James Gross's research on cognitive reappraisal proves it. When you deliberately activate your observing mind, when you observe and reframe your feelings instead of just burying them, you drastically reduce their intensity. You give yourself permission to feel an emotion fully, but you refuse to let it own you. That is how you keep a clear head and make significantly better decisions. Section 4, leadership and quiet authority. Let's look at how mastering yourself profoundly changes how others treat you. When you show up with consistent emotional presence, you project these incredibly powerful silent messages. You signal that you operate from principle, not impulse. And when people realize they literally cannot bait you, shake you, or provoke you into acting out of character, the entire dynamic shifts. That steady behavior naturally demands respect. You become the grounding force in the room. A perfect historical example of this is Barack Obama's no-drama Obama standard. Impartially looking back at his presidency, during incredibly tense, high-stakes moments in the Situation Room, his team noted that his greatest asset was this unshakable equilibrium. He simply refused to let the intense, volatile urgency of a crisis crowd out rational long-term thinking. We see the exact same thing in the life of Nikola Tesla. When Thomas Edison publicly humiliated him and took credit for his work, Tesla didn't retaliate emotionally. He demonstrated how detachment functions as an absolute shield for your focus. He just kept working, completely immune to the need for external validation or the urge to react to negativity. Finally, Section 5, your daily detachment playbook. Let's get extremely practical with how you can implement this mastery today. We've got 4 incredibly effective steps you can start using right away. They pull from neuroscience, cognitive behavioral therapy, and ancient stoicism to give you a clear, proven procedure for staying calm under pressure. Let's break them down. First up is name it to tame it, a brilliant technique from neuroscientist Dr. Dan Siegel. When a strong emotion hits, just tweak your language. Instead of saying, I am angry, say, I notice I am feeling anger. It sounds minor, right? But that tiny linguistic shift creates an immediate psychological gap. It literally turns you from the storm itself into the person calmly watching the storm. Step 2, the 10-second pause. In a heated moment, take 10 seconds of pure silence before you respond. And look, this isn't about plotting the perfect cutting comeback. It's simply giving your prefrontal cortex the time it needs to come back online. Abraham Lincoln actually did a version of this. He'd write furious letters when he was mad, and then just sleep on them. More often than not, he never even sent them. Step 3 is the observer stance, straight out of cognitive behavioral therapy. In a moment of overwhelm, mentally step outside of your own body. Imagine you're standing across the room, watching yourself as a third party. Ask, what would a calm, wise friend say to the person I'm looking at right now? It gives you instant perspective without bottling up what you're actually feeling. Step 4 is premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. Seneca did this every single day. Before a big event, sit down and deliberately think about the absolute worst-case scenarios. Sit with them and make peace with them in advance. Because when you've already mentally processed the worst possible outcome, the fear of it completely loses its power to paralyze you in the present moment. And the final piece of the puzzle? Channel that Kobe Bryant mentality. Detach completely from the outcome and attach fiercely to your own process. You control your effort, you control your preparation. Refuse to let your internal peace depend on an external scoreboard you can't completely control. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. When life gets chaotic, will you be the storm or the one watching the storm? Remember, emotional detachment is not about checking out of life. It's about mastering exactly how you choose to meet it. When you govern your inner world, no one can manipulate your outer world. Thanks for tuning into this explainer. Now go out there and build your quiet authority.